Biggest thing that holds people back is fear, but then you'll quickly realize the biggest thing that you'll regret is regret.
I'm curious, what identity did you have to kill to go from a failing personal trainer at 18 to making your first million just 2 years after quitting your 9 to 5?
When you realize that you don't give a shit what anyone else thinks and you can just go and do the thing you want to do anyway, no one cares, your life will continue. At one point, I thought I was fucking Billy Big Shit, because most people in the UK make maybe like £3 a month. So I'm making 10 times more than everyone else. I went to the US and I went to a business event. I met that guy now who's one of my best friends. He was making 2 to 3 million a month. And this is where proximity is power. If you get around successful people, you start to see the things they do, the way they think. And that's ultimately kind of the game. Obviously my background is fitness. So one of the first things I say to everyone is take your fitness and your body seriously, because you can control what you eat, you can control what you do every day, you can control how you basically look, and focus on that to be the first thing you can kind of stack wins. Maybe if you lack confidence, if you get yourself in great shape and you wake up every morning, you look at yourself like, oh, I'm in the fucking best shape I've ever been in, you will have way more confidence than you have.
You surprise me because you manage hundreds of trainers, you've scaled to millions, you're in a relationship, you're about to become a father, you're still physically fit. How do you do all of that without burning out? Selling 40-pound Word documents on the side to building an $18 million coaching empire. Today I'm joined by the physically jacked and financially stacked Charlie Johnson, the guy who went from being a failed personal trainer at 18 to impacting 17,000 lives and counting. But here's the part most people miss. When Charlie started, he hated how he looked. He struggled with food, he struggled with confidence, and he felt stuck in a version of himself that he couldn't outgrow. Fast forward to now, he's helped clients generate over $42 million in revenue, works with some of the best in the world, and shows no signs of slowing down. If you've ever felt like you should be further ahead by now, if you're scaling but still battling your own mindset, then this is the episode that'll punch through your ceiling. Stick around because Charlie's going to show you exactly how to kill your old identity and build the version of yourself that wins. Hit that subscribe button, share with a high-performing friend, and let's dive in. Charlie, welcome to the Limitless CEO podcast. I want to start by saying you strike me as a man who doesn't give up. But I'm curious because I feel like it wasn't always that way. And you say that you believe you have to kill your current identity to get to the next level. So I'm curious, what identity did you have to kill to go from a failing personal trainer at 18 to making your first million just 2 years after quitting your 9 to 5?
The biggest thing that holds people back is fear, but then you'll quickly realize the biggest thing that you'll regret is regret. And when you realize that the price of regret is greater than the price of fear, you'll then realize you need to kind of change. So for me, the biggest thing I had to kill was the fact of actually being worried about what fear is about. So what most people don't understand is that the reason you're afraid of something is actually normally because you're afraid of embarrassment. And then when you realize that you don't give a shit what anyone else thinks and you can just go and do the thing you want to do anyway, and if you go and try and build a business and you fail, no one cares, your life will continue. So I think that was a big thing, realizing that ultimately no one actually cares about you as much as they probably think. It's more actually about your opinions of other people. You're concerned about way, way too much. And I think if you try and remove that from the table in terms of the way you think, and you think more just about what do you actually personally want long term, and is the life you're doing right now congruent with that, it's quick to then be able to make that shift. You have a similar background to me in terms of working in the tunnels. I was stuck in a 9 to 5 job for 6-7 years. And I quickly realized if I didn't make the pivot and take the bold leap to kind of destroy the version of me at that point, I was going to have that life for the next 25-30 years.
In most places you've spoken, you've always spoken about, and I say a lot of geniuses have this thing where they always talk about the pivot. But I'm curious, what was the mindset that made you want to pivot in terms of why didn't you just think, let me get a higher paying job, more security, rather than let me start a business? What made you think business is the way forward?
So the one thing I've always been obsessed with is leverage. So in a job and a PAYE salary, there's only so much you can earn. There's only so much companies can pay you. If you own the business, it's technically uncapped. And that's where I would constantly try and look for, in my job, I'm now earning the most in my position I physically can. Unless I become managing director and waste 20 years to go and do that, and then okay, cool. I now earn more than the managing director of that company does. I quickly realized, well, I'm not going to wait 20 years because I might be able to get that position. when you can actually go and build your own future and go and do it and then take control of the situation. Because the big thing I realized is I was working in a big corporation is it was politics. It's bullshit. The person who's the best isn't actually the person who gets the job. It's often the person who's either most popular or who's been hanging around the longest waiting in the fucking queue to get their promotion. And the reality is you also quickly realize if you're in the UK, you are screwed from a tax standpoint that you can actually never get wealthy. Because if you actually earn a job in terms of from a salary perspective, you're losing all the money off the top from tax straight away. If you own a business, you still get annihilated in the UK, but slightly less so because you can kind of offset
get taxed
a lot of
after the fact.
Exactly.
It's really interesting. And yeah, I was always told, promotions were made down the pub, not the office. So I'm guessing though there was a moment where you didn't have this identity, you didn't think this way. So what was that identity that you had to kill that made you at least begin to think this way?
I always was ambitious from a very young age and had a lot of drive. I just didn't know where to kind of channel it. And that actually led to probably something that might resonate a lot with the audience here, which is frustration and probably unhappiness. And unhappiness is essentially when like you have expectations for your life and essentially you cannot meet them. You have no idea how you can do that. And I think that's when also people get overwhelmed, they get anxious, they have all these kind of life problems. So for me, I was constantly kind of looking probably from 21 to 26 of like, how am I going to kind of figure this shit out? And I think I felt that I ruined my life at 21 at one point because all of my friends were coming out of university and college with degrees, getting good jobs for big companies, and I hadn't gone to university. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of screwed. I'm just going to go and become an estate agent and kind of see what happens from that. And then I quickly actually learned a lot of business acumen from that job and some great people who originally worked and owned this independent business who then later sold to a big corporate company. And I saw a very different thing happen. How an independent business run by two very driven individuals worked, and then how something that got acquired by a big corporation runs. And then you can suddenly see the stark difference in terms of from a management perspective, and also a work ethic, a culture.
Did it change for the good or did it change?
Oh, well, it's terrible.
Oh, really?
It was terrible.
Really?
And it was good for me because it allowed me free reign to kind of do whatever I wanted. And I built another business whilst working full time, making 20K a month online and on social media, and no one batted an eyelid. Would my previous employers let me get away with that? Probably not. And this is where sometimes fate falls in your favor with these kind of small things that are completely out of your control. And that's where I think you can also kind of create your own luck by also taking those opportunities when they come to you and also having your eyes open. And I think for anyone listening to this right now, a lot of people are afraid right now with the shifts in terms of AI and potential job displacements. If you actually flip it on the corner, the other way around, flip the coin, there's actually more opportunities than ever. And I think that's the biggest thing I had to work on was changing my belief system in terms of what was possible rather than what's not possible.
Let's dig deeper into something you said there. You said working for a company allowed me to see things. So let's dig a bit into that and the reason I want to dig into this, because a lot of people are just like, I never want to work for anybody, working for somebody for like, blah, blah. I want to understand what were the benefits of working in a corporate position and how did that shape the entrepreneur that you are today when you're leading your team and everything else?
Let me borrow you for a moment. There's an ancient concept that really resonates with me. The difference between motion and action. Motion is being busy, action is being productive. And I see so many brilliant fitness coaches and entrepreneurs stuck in endless motion. They're posting content, they're taking courses, hustling harder than anyone I know, but they're not actually moving forwards. They're like hamsters on a wheel. Lots of energy, but zero progress. The greatest entrepreneurs I've studied will have one thing in common. They focus on leverage, not effort. They build systems that work while they sleep, and they create value that compounds. That's what the 7-Figure Scaling System framework is really about. It's not just about hitting 10K a month, though that's nice. It's about creating your time, your energy, your life, so you get financial freedom, location freedom, time freedom to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, and build a business that actually serves you. And if this is exactly what you want to do, I invite you for a free business audit. We'll map out exactly where you are now, where you want to go, and what the key points of constraint are you need to fix. And if you're a good fit to work with us, we can show you what that looks like. If not, we'll give you a ton of value. So hit the link below the podcast. You can book in a free call and we'll show you what exceptional looks like. It's the most stupid piece of advice I hear people say. It's like, you're 18 years old, go and start a business. Like, cool. If you want to go and do that, like, great, that's fine.
Yeah.
But what I actually think is really smart is you go find someone who's got experience and maybe in the specific industry you want to work in, and then you go and work for them for a year or two. You learn how these specific nuances in the industry work, how teams run, because you're getting paid to learn rather than losing money making mistakes. So from my perspective, the big things I learned was like how to manage teams, how big corporations work, how like team culture works, sales, communication, all these different systems, dealing with difficult customers. And one thing really stuck out to me that I'll never forget is the moment that the corporate company I worked for made me sack 6 women a week before Christmas because they were getting rid of an admin department. And my bosses, who were the area managers, didn't want to do it. So I was like, okay, fucking I'm up for the firing line, I have to fucking deal with this one. And obviously it's not my fault, I'm just like the messenger. And that really resonated with me of like, okay, people think they're safe when they have a job. It's like, you're not really. Like,
There's always a risk. It's just you got to choose your risk wisely.
and at least if you're an entrepreneur, you have control, you know what's going on. You're not going to wake up one day and be like, oh, see you, you're not here tomorrow, Charlie.
Well, you do have the control in the sense that you create your own luck.
You're aware of what's going on at least.
Whereas, you can project your financial forecast for the future. Whereas with a company, you think it's all going well, then boom, hey, can you come into my office, please? And ultimately, yes, it's true with a business, there's an infinite upside. Whereas with a company, it's kind of like just stagnant. And technically the downsides are there, but we just don't look at them. I compare this to if you trade versus if you have a bank account. If you have a bank account, your balance is there. But behind the screen in the banks, they're trading your money. Whereas if you trade, you actually see your money going up and down. It's very, very scary. But if you can bring yourself to have the psychology of, controlling your emotions when you watch your money go up and down, ultimately, again, there's an infinite upside. If you can master the trading well, then I'm not convincing anyone to go and trade. I'm just giving an analogy. Whereas here with a company, it's like you think it's all going well. Oh, I'm going to get promoted in 12 months, which for me is crazy to wait 12 months to that's a whole lifetime.
To make an extra $2,000 a year or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that makes a lot of sense. And you didn't do what most people do. And I love what you just said there. If you're 18, people telling you to go start a business, and maybe that works. I mean, it worked for some people and that's okay, but it's not going to work for everyone. You also mentioned there that, it's really wise to model people, work for a business who does what you want to do. I actually worked for one of the biggest coaching companies on the planet and saw how they did things. And that's why now I can run my own coaching company. So that definitely works. But the gold here for you is you didn't just burn the boat like everyone's preaching on today's social media world. You actually built your thing on the side while you had your full-time job. When did you know it was now the right time to just let your wings go?
At the point I was earning more than from my side hustle than my full-time gig was when I kind of needed to have conversation in terms of like leaving the full-time job. And I think the reality is I probably kicked that can down the road for too long. Why? Because I was in the most dangerous place people are in. And I see this with people we work with all the time, and it's comfort zone. Like people make like 10K a month, they're kind of comfortable, got a little bit of freedom, and then they don't really push anymore because they haven't got anything else to kind of drive them to the next level. So for me, I was probably very comfortable because I was making $100,000 a year in salary. I was making 10, 15K a month from my business, like all profit. So I was like zero stress, like chilled as hell. But then I realized that what if I'm spending 8 hours a day on this other job that I don't really like doing and I don't like being told what to do, and I spend maybe an hour or two on this other thing, what if I just spend 10 hours a day on on my side hustle and I can make 10 times as much? And that's essentially what happened, because I went from making maybe 20K a month to 200K a month in maybe 2 years.
Nice. I have a question. Does it get easier? This is actually a really good question. Does it get easier to go to work to your 9 to 5 when you know you don't have to?
Yeah, I would agree, 100%. Also, because it's like, no, I didn't give a fuck, but I didn't give a fuck. So like this is.
But then do your results when you don't give a fuck get better?
In terms of my work. So I'm a big believer in the Pareto principle of like, I would do 20% of actions get 80% of results.
Oh yeah, nice.
So essentially I would go into work, I try and do everything. I managed an entire branch and had a team. So I would basically, my goal was like, I get all my work done by kind of 10 o'clock and then just do whatever I want the rest of the day. So
nice.
like I would.
So you got paid to run your business.
Yeah, I got paid to run my own business. I'd sometimes go for a sunbed, get my hair cut. Like I'd leave early to go to the gym. So like, as I said before, with my previous employers who weren't a corporate company, I wouldn't have been able to get away with that. But I think that's also one of the things of right time, right place, but also the right person, kind of like the 3 Ps. And it's also you seizing that opportunity and be willing to do it. And I think no one cared what I was doing outside of work because all my work was actually getting done and we were still excelling anyway, which then actually shows how badly that company was run. Because if I can do my entire day's work by 10 a.m., I'm massively underutilized. And even I would come to the people within that business being like, this social media thing, like you should probably take this seriously. You could do this, you could do this, and this, and that.
Because he was trying to bring what you was doing on your business.
And they would just like
company.
laughing me off because they were like old school, and I was like, joke's on you, because
because I'm making 20K a month.
Yeah, I'm making more than your salary from my side thing that you don't even know about.
The reason I asked that question is because a lot of the time people fail, and I've been a victim of this before, is when there's so much pressure to perform, people falter, people kind of just get disabled. Whereas it's like, I don't really play golf, but I know this analogy. So I'm going to mess up the wordings and all that. But I've heard this many times from people that do play golf. It's like, you go to hit a ball that counts as one of your shots and you do terribly well. You do terrible. And then for the fun of it, you drop another ball and you're just like, it's not really going to count, but let me hit the ball. And apparently that ball does like extraordinary. And you're like, what? Why didn't that happen on that shot? And the only difference is there was no pressure. So I just what's your opinion on actually handling pressure? Because not everyone's going to have a 20K a month, business while they're at their 9 to 5. But some people are at their 9 to 5 trying to create a 20K a month business, but they're just not being able to manage it well. What advice would you give them?
The best piece of advice I would give anyone is, what's the worst case scenario that can happen? If you always jump to the worst case scenario, it kind of then gives you some reassurance. Even say, for example, I had full-time job, side business. I was like, okay, if I leave my full-time job and I go into side business, if it doesn't work, what happens? I'm back to square one where I was anyway. So like the only
prepare for the worst case.
Yeah. So like the risk is not actually taking a risk. And what I found out transpired later on is that my partner at the time, her father was like, is he fucking clinically insane? Like, why is he? Because they were from a family where people have like a job for 30 years, that type of continuity. Whereas I've always been a little bit more ambitious and kind of cavalier and seen like life as a bit of a challenge and always seek that challenge. I think the most important skills people need to have a business is resilience and focus, because it is difficult and it's also easy to get distracted. So I think people being intentional of what you're trying to do with your side business and why, and also what's the percentage likelihood of this kind of working? Because I also did some really other stupid businesses as a side hustle. One was I set up a CBD business, trying to sell CBD because that came in trend. I was like, I could get this from like Eastern Europe. I could sell it online. Terrible idea. Yeah. But I also learned some lessons from that because I had a business partner with that. And I also realized I don't want a business partner because it just didn't kind of make any sense. And I was kind of doing everything from that front. So you can learn from all these kind of different experiences through life.
What did you learn about having a business partner?
You have to, what skill do they have that you don't? What do you actually need them for? So like the only other, at the moment, I'm working on a software project. What I would, if I had a really strong technical co-founder for a software thing, like, okay, cool. I'd have someone come in to partner with on that, but they have to be able to bring something to the table that you don't have a 10 out of 10 strength in. Because if you're both, let's say 10 out of 10 at marketing, well, like what problem does it solve having both of you there necessarily? And I also think it's complicating things more than it needs to be done sometimes. I see that the way I work with a lot of businesses right now, where there's business partners and the thing goes pear-shaped because they have disagreements.
It's crazy. I correlate this with accountability buddies. It's very unfortunate. It sounds really stupid to say this out loud. Today, people are going into business partnerships for moral support. It's true, you know? Like, you're laughing because it's so true. We've all seen it. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get into partnership with this person. Oh, really? Like, what's he going to bring? Oh, well, he's good at marketing too, but you're good at marketing. Yeah, but
so then you argue over marketing.
So yeah, exactly. And, you know, when you dig deep into it, at least I've come to find this, it's usually just like they want an accountability buddy that's going to hold them accountable. And that's the wrong reason to get into a partnership in a business. Because it's just a matter of time before the dopamine fades. And, you know, I mean, in my case, I've never seen accountability partnerships work. In the end, it always ends up being very, very sour. So
I also think for a big mistake a lot of people make is they start businesses with friends and family, which can cause a lot of problems because there's emotion involved in business, where business is data driven rather than emotion driven. And that's where it comes difficult to be like, okay, I can think of another client right now who's kind of got the situation with someone who works with him. It's like, he's got a difficult situation with his business partner who's going through depression, some mental health issues, that he's now trying to deal with that because he's got himself in a bad place. Whereas like, it was just obviously a difficult thing to deal with, but like, if you have full control, you have full control, and you have to make sure if are they bringing something to the table you don't have, whether it be skills, finances, or network.
Yeah, and get it all out on the table. It's funny, actually. You said that, and I remembered one of my first guests, 8-figure recruitment agency woman. She's got this company with her husband. And I asked her, like, what advice do you give to couples that work with each other? And I thought she was going to give me this profound advice. She's like, just accept it. You know, like work is your life. And they seem to be doing really well. And I believe the success comes down to just being honest. Like they're honest with each other. They're not going to try and lie with each other and stuff. So you got to lay it out on the table, be honest, even put worse expectations up front. So at least then if it's better than that, then there's a bonus. So that's awesome. So now I want to understand a few things, you know. Everybody with their old identity has, you know, some excruciatingly painful limiting beliefs. What were your limiting beliefs at the beginning?
That I wasn't good enough and I couldn't do it. And I think that's where a lot of my drive came from. I had to stack so many fucking wins to the point where it was like irrefutable that I could be successful. And someone asked me this maybe like 2 years ago, like, when did you get rid of imposter syndrome? And I was like, probably about now. So, and that was at that point, I'd probably sold $10-12 million of stuff online. We were like loads of clients. I had like quote unquote success. And I think that's also the biggest challenge in business is probably managing your own psychology. And also the most difficult thing was that also managing your emotions around it. Because if you can control your emotions, it also stops you making stupid decisions and also allows you to actually do the work you need to do regardless of how you feel. And one of the reasons people aren't successful is like, oh, I feel a bit down today. I'm just going to sit on the sofa and eat fucking crap and not do what I'm supposed to do. It's like, that's then the downward spiral where the same thing happens the next day or you feel even worse because you have the most painful thing, which is regret.
Yeah, they're running their business on energy. And it's actually, it sounds like I'm trying to be funny, but I'm not. You know, I was talking to someone once and they went, oh, you know, the horoscopes and this. And I was thinking, God help you. You know, you're running your business on horoscopes. It's interesting because you mentioned that you have to have like a way of dealing with imposter syndrome. And I actually appreciate your honesty. Thank you very much for saying that, you know, you're just dealing with it now. What are some of your rituals and routines to manage it or to deal with it?
I would say now it's not necessarily an issue. It probably was 2 years ago. But I say what really helped me overcome that was actually looking at client results. When you like,
so validation.
Nothing gives me more. Yeah, nothing gives me more joy than someone message being like, I'll shout him out if you watch this. Comment below if you watch this. Chris Mooten is a really nice client of ours from South Africa.
Chris Mooten, you'll be on the show next.
Yeah. He messaged me being like, dude, I just want to say you're so inspiring. My goal is to like live the lifestyle that you do. You really inspire everything. I was like, fuck, that's like sick. Because people see like the top 1%, but they don't see all the other stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And I think that's the difficult thing to try and convey to people when we try and talk about this before the podcast is that people want like the results of they see people have online, but then they don't want to actually do the work when no one's watching, which is actually the challenging thing to do to get yourself psychologically to do that. Because a lot of the time you're not motivated, but you still got to just do it anyway. And when you have that do it anyway mentality, it becomes easy.
The thing is, most people are always comparing their day one to someone's day 100, and then they're just knocking themselves down. And I've heard people say, oh, you should compare yourself, but you should use it as motivation. I don't think, well, based on my studies, not my opinion, the brain is wired to compare well. You know, it's wired to catalog information, you know, withhold its resources and magnify all the risk. And one of the things that kind of will help, but has helped me at least, is to just understand the lane that you're playing and be very honest with yourself. What advice would you give to, you said 2 years ago you dealt with your imposter syndrome. What advice would you give to that guy from 5 years ago, let's say, that he really needed to hear that would have helped him overcome the imposter syndrome sooner?
The best advice I would have given him is focus on the process, not the prize at the end. So like breaking it up into daily chunks. The second thing I'd also say is surround yourself with successful people and people who are ahead of you. Because what you will start to do is how human beings learn is mirror their behavior, mirror what they do. And that's ultimately when you start to pick up someone's behavior and the way they actually act, you then start to pick up some of their results. Because all of this is like a small compound effect of small daily decisions are either taking you towards where you want to be or away. And most people don't realize they're eroding their success and their future by not doing what they're supposed to do, not getting up when they're supposed to get up, not planning the work they need to do the day before. Like the really basic stuff that's not sexy is really the thing that moves the needle.
I love that answer. Honestly, I love it. You know why? Because when you said, you know, I dealt with it 2 years ago, my first thought was, well, someone listening to this hasn't created $42 million for their clients, and now they're listening to this going, well, it's easy for you because you've got this external validation. But the truth is, it doesn't matter how much you've created for clients. We've all got external validation somehow if we just focus on the process. I mean, before this, we were talking about this podcast, and I said, I don't even know how I've done so well, but it's done quite well in such a short space of time. Honestly, it's because I just focus on one session at a time, one guest at a time. And if someone's listening to this, they've probably heard this before, that it's process, focus on the process, but just focus on the process. Can you explain or share the exact moment you realized that you had to change that old identity? You know, part of me is thinking, you know, to go from 0 to 10K, 10K to 100, 100 to a million, there's like different identities that have to happen or transition. Can you explain that?
I would say the first one is you need to be a hustler at the beginning to get to 10K a month. You just got to be willing to grind. And in reality, it's like just kind of all out action. I'd say then probably from 10 to 50K a month is okay. Like, how do we have some type of like generalization of a system and some organization rather than just becoming chaos and anarchy? I would say once you start to go over 100K, we could talk about a month or a year. If we look at, say, a month, so we're talking over 7 figures a year, it's then a very different game in terms of people, data, and actually being kind of strategic with what you do, which actually my natural nature is kind of like bulldoze my way through things, which then caused me a lot of problems because my team are like, we're going this way. This is because I'm kind of like a yo-yo, changing my mind what I want to do all the time. Whereas you have to kind of sometimes, like, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Sometimes you have to slow down to go faster and be more intentional with what you do when you have more success, because you also have more leverage, whether it's be a team you have, whether it's your ability to run paid ads, whether it's your ability with content. That's ultimately when you're building like a machine. And when you can direct that with more intent, you'll then have more of a result come back to you. And I think that's what people just kind of need to understand, the different levels as you go through. People think that they've conquered the game when they get to 30 to 50K a month. I was like, dude, okay, that's cool. Like we were talking about earlier about the Facebook
Then they're
thing.
abruptly awoken.
But then, like, okay, the thing you're doing now stops working and then you're goosed, which is why for everyone listening to this, the most important thing you have to understand is you have the business you have today and you have the business you have tomorrow. You have two businesses, and most people don't look at the business tomorrow in terms of where the future is going. And the half-life of information is getting faster and faster and faster because of technology right now. And that's where people have to try and stay at the head of the curve, which is really the game where you have an unfair advantage.
Yeah, it's true. And also, I don't know if you know who Jay Abrahams, he says, you know, business is two things, innovation and marketing. And if you don't innovate, you die. Look at Blockbuster. You know, no one knows them anymore. You know, my siblings are like 12. They don't even know what Blockbuster is, you know. And Netflix, obviously, you know, world phenomenon. So if you're not innovating, you technically are dying. Charlie, congratulations. You're about to have a child soon. You know, congratulations on that. That's actually amazing. And I'm sure almost, well, let me ask actually, with a kid on the way, if in any way, how is that further impacting your now identity or the identity that you're becoming?
I don't want to say it's making me take life more seriously, but it is to some degree, because I now have a further responsibility than me just being reckless trying to run a business for no reason. And so it's kind of giving you more of a purpose. And I say the other big thing I've said to a lot of people is it's made me think in longer time horizons. So if I'm currently 35 years old and my daughter was born this year, in 20 years' time when she's 20 years old, what will she think of me? What will my life look like? What will our life look like? What could I make our life look like when she's 10 years old, when I'm 45? So trying to have that vision of thinking ahead of like, what do I actually want and why? I actually sat down on Monday, did this for an hour and a half, used AI to do it, and actually used some Tony Robbins prompts. It's very good. And like mapped, okay, what's the 10-year vision of what I want for life? What do I need to do in the next year to do that? What do I want to do in the next 90 days? Because one of the things I found, I wouldn't use the word confusing, but maybe underwhelming, and this may sound very cliche to people, is that I've started to get pretty much all the things I want and I feel no different.
Oh, yeah.
So then you're like, well, what am I actually doing this shit for if I've got the car I want, the house I want, and I still have the same problems I had before? And I think that's where you need to be very intentional about what you're doing and focus on when you can build the life you actually want rather than maybe the life other people think you should have.
I find that very interesting because even when you mentioned your client who said, you inspire him, and, you know, part of me thought it's very interesting because sometimes we are inspired by other people and then we sit in their chair and we go, now what? And I was actually going to ask this later, and maybe I'll keep it for later. But we need something. We need some anchor point to keep going. Otherwise, we end up with something called gold medal depression. Gold medal depression, Neil Armstrong went to the moon, became very, very depressed. Tyson Fury, I spoke about this on one of my solo episodes. Tyson Fury wins the world, heavyweight belt against Klitschko, goes into 3-year depression. So we need that thing to keep going. And it sounds like by having a child on the way, you've found that anchor point. Not just, kids, touch wood, they're not a 2-year goal. It's like a lifelong mission. So you found that mission. It sounds like.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the other thing that probably drives me a lot is, it just reminded me, is competition. So I had a speaking coach I was actually working with for a while, and one of the things that transpired that we kind of uncovered is I have a massive love for competition. I'm naturally very competitive. She said, like, if someone gave you $100 million but you're never allowed to compete in anything ever again, would you take it? I was like, I thought about everything I do. And I was like, pretty much everything I do has some form of competition. So I was like, I can't take the money because I can't play, not that I play video games, but I can't play sports. I can't do some of the fitness stuff I want to do. Everything, because I like the gamification of life, and I almost want to turn life into like Grand Theft Auto in the real video game.
And with enough competition, you'll make 200 million.
Yeah. It's because a fantastic book I'd recommend anyone reads is Choose Your Enemies Wisely by Patrick Bet-David.
Oh, nice.
And it talks about having enemies, whether it be something in society you don't like, maybe a business competitor, it could be even a family member or someone, like, to give you a bit of that kind of dark energy to drive you. And whether it be right or wrong, I'm a bit of a believer that you're driven more by pain than you are by pleasure. Because once you have a lot of things you want, if people are just driven by like, oh, I can get another supercar, like, bro, no one cares at that point.
Yeah,
so you have to have like something that's going to kind of push you. And if you look at people like maybe, like, I wouldn't want to be Elon Musk. Like, I couldn't imagine the problems the dude has to deal with in his head every day. But that has to be driven by something. If you read his book as well, he talks about a lot how difficult his upbringing was. You can kind of see how that's weaved into some of the things he does.
Yeah, it's very true. Sometimes I'm going to butcher this. So maybe I'm not. They say good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times. Bad times create strong people. Strong people create good times. And as much as we would like to say that, having a golden spoon in our mouths would be nice, if my dad was a billionaire and he just bought me everything, it doesn't fulfill you. Because once you've got something, I never thought I'd be quoting Dan Bilzerian on a podcast like this, but he says it best, and he says it years ago. He said, look, at one point I wanted the Ford, and I got the Ford, but now I drive like Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and part of me, wishes I could have that feeling that I had when I bought my Ford, because now I can afford all these things, but they mean nothing to me. So he's almost now emotionless. These are his words, not mine. Whereas when you have something to live for, you've got that thing that's going to move you, which eventually, kind of creates that pull rather than a push. Because most people are trying to push for stuff. So that's cool.
Can I give you another example of that, actually? So
yes, please do.
Something I found a very weird, profound experience was the first time I flew first class. And I realized that there isn't anything else you can go above that other than going on a private jet. And I was like, and then having done it quite a few times now, it's just like, it might as well be fucking economy at this point because you're just used to it. And that's where your kind of dopamine level is just kind of used to this type of thing. I think it's very difficult to try and say, but really appreciate the small things as you progress. And I didn't take in enough of when I had certain milestones in business or really celebrate. Like, I have no clue when I first did 100K a month in my business. No clue. Like, I don't know. I roughly kind of know when it was, but I didn't do anything to celebrate it. Like, which is why when I set my second business, I did the first 100K a month. I was like, I'm going to buy myself a watch. Then I've got something like, oh, I did this for them.
As cliche as it sounds, an attitude of gratitude is an absolute must, because if we look at virtue signaling, broke people virtue signaling is, buying a watch, renting a car, apparently in Miami, they do these things where you can rent content mansions for a day, and that's virtue signaling for broke people. But virtue signaling for rich people, they're not trying to look like they've got money, most of them. Virtue signaling for them is actually going down. Like, you look at Bill Gates, he's like wearing some, they're probably worth a lot of money, but they just look normal. He's probably wearing some Apple Watch. Because virtue signaling, once you've got everything, is now how can I bring myself back to, humility? And I'm sure a lot of the times you end up appreciating much more what you've got just by seeing, other neighborhoods or other areas. Or even, we're very, very fortunate in Dubai. I mean, I go on holiday and I think, Dubai is better. This is better. This is better. But it almost ruins you because you become this like spoiled little brat. So that makes a lot of sense. Before we move on to the next topic, I just want to give some actionable advice because we hear this a lot in self-development. Hey, you got to be the person who does the thing, who has the result. Be the person. And people are sometimes like, well, I'm trying. So what's the first step someone can take to kill their old identity to become the person who they need to be that's going to create their next level?
So obviously my background is fitness. So one of the first things I say to everyone is like, take your fitness and your body seriously. Because if you can, that's the easiest area of your life to get what you want. Because you can control what you eat, you can control what you do every day, you can control how you basically look, and focus on that to be the first thing you can kind of stack wins. Because maybe if you lack confidence, if you get yourself in great shape and you wake up every morning, you look at yourself like, oh, I'm in the fucking best shape I've ever been in, you will have way more confidence than you had before. So that would be the first thing I'd kind of look at. The second thing would be trying to surround yourself with the right like-minded people and remove negative people from your world or remove negative information from your world, because they are the fastest thing that will erode your mind in terms of you thinking bigger and maybe taking the actions, because it's going to plant the seed of doubt in your brain that's going to grow. So it might be like, it can even be a lot of time people closest to you, whether it be family members or parents, being like, oh, do you really think you should go and start that business? And then that plants that seed of doubt in you. Or do you think you should go and hire this coach to help you do X, Y, Z? There's a lot of money. And it plants that seed of doubt. And I think that seed of doubt is one of the things that stops so many people being successful, because they don't actually take the leap. And I think throughout my career, and it continues to be like this, I kind of have like a blurred vision of where I'm going. And I just take like if you have stepping stones, I take the first step and then I step on that stepping stone, and then the next stepping stone appears and I step on that. Whereas people are too concerned about having a 10-year business plan. Like, bro, like Mike Tyson saying, everyone's planning to get punched in the face. It's never going to work with an actual business plan, in my opinion, of more than 90 days right now.
Plus now, like, innovation and technology is fast. Like imagine having a 10-year business plan in November 2022 when ChatGPT came out. That went down the drain.
And that's where it's your ability to pivot is very, very important.
Yeah, adaptability. Let's dig deeper into the first answer there. I like that, because technically a strong body equals a strong mind. Most people are trying to have a strong mind with a weak body. So how did your relationship with fitness help you with your discipline in business?
Well, if you look at, this is why I get frustrated with people who are fitness trainers who are broke. Also, I've worked with a lot of very high level entrepreneurs and get in shape who aren't in great shape. I was like, if you look at the actual core character traits of what you need to either be in great shape or to run a successful business, 1, be very organized. 2, be disciplined. 3 is be consistent. 4 is just kind of do the fucking thing regardless of how you feel. So there's exact same carryover in terms of like personality traits and the way you conduct yourself. The problem is that I see people maybe with their own body is it has more emotion involved with it, because it's about you. And that's maybe when it's some form of insecurity or something that maybe triggers them to think they cannot get in shape and cannot do X, Y, and Z. And the fastest thing I would say for anyone to actually solve the problem is just hire a coach to get you in shape. Because once you're in shape, it's easy
and
to
you have the accountability. You know, a lot of people have been trying to do it. Now they're taking Mounjaro or Ozempic. They're doing everything but from go and train.
And it's actually not as hard as you think. Like, I work out 4 days a week now, but like if you're a guy listening to this, you can work out 3 days a week in the gym, have a decent nutrition, and you can get in great shape. You don't have to spend 50 hours a week working out like some people do. It's about being effective rather than busy. Exactly the same as business.
And I also think what's exactly the same is you don't necessarily always feel good before. Like, because going back to what you said, do it despite how you feel. You have to accept that you're not always going to feel good before, but you're going to feel amazing after. You know, you're not going to feel good before going to the gym, but you feel amazing after. You're not going to feel good before making, that cold call or that door knocking or sending that difficult email, but it's going to feel amazing after.
But do you know what's going to make you feel worse? It's if you don't make the cold call or you don't go to the gym.
Yes.
Because in your brain, you're going to be like,
I call that the pressure cooker. And it's like all these things you didn't do, and it's just getting stuffed and stuffed and stuffed. And eventually you call yourself depressed. And it's because of you so many times said you was going to do something and you never did it. And now you just don't even believe in yourself anymore. And because I mentioned that, I just want to kind of close that loop. If that is you and you're at that place where you've been to all the events and you read all the books, here's how you start. You start by telling yourself you're going to do the stupidest things. If you're like, I'm going to pick up this laptop, pick the laptop up. I know this sounds really stupid, but if you're at that place where you don't no longer believe in yourself and you're listening to this, Start with the stupidest things like, oh, I'm just going to go down the stairs into the kitchen, and then do it. And then eventually you'll start to build up that habit that, oh, wow, look, I say what I do what I say, and I say what I do.
Well, it's when you can keep promises to yourself, because you can't keep promises to yourself, then who can you keep promises to?
I speak to a lot of people that are just at that level now. They're like, there's no point even doing or saying anything because I just know I'm not going to do it. And I just think to myself,
well, then you will lose.
Start from the ground up.
You will accept you will lose, because someone who is willing to do that thing will beat you. And that's always been, like I said, you can tell I'm competitive. It's like, sounds bad. I like sometimes people trying to fuck with me a bit, because it's amazing. It pushes me on to be like, oh, fuck you guys, watch this. Like
at the end of the day, competition is good. Obviously, the way that the world is going in today, I don't want to dive into side topics here, but it's like, just sit down, focus on how you feel. Oh, if you don't feel like doing it, just, do it tomorrow. But at the end of the day, there's someone out there that's absolutely laser focused on what they want. And their expectation of what normal is, going back to what I was saying before this podcast, that other person's expectation of what normal is to succeed versus your expectation of what normal is. Like, oh, I sent 3 messages. Why don't I have a client? And that's normal to this person. But this person's like, I sent 100 and I don't feel good about it. I need to send 200. And then you worry, or you look at the final, this person looks successful. Oh, wow, they're quite lucky. You have to reset expectations on a massive scale, because the way that the world is today, due to, I don't know if it's due to social media or if it's due to TikTok, everyone's expectation of what it takes to succeed versus what it actually takes to succeed is unbelievable. Like Warren Buffett says it the best. He says, you can't sleep with 9 women in 1 month and have, 1 baby in 1 month. It's going to take 9 months. People just want to have the 1 month.
I think the fastest way for anyone to get over that is to actually get in the room with people who have done the thing you want to do and actually see the fucking person.
How do you get in the room with people? That's a big question.
Essentially pay. So how did I first get in the room with success? I'll give you a good story. So for example, when I think it was 2020, my fitness business was maybe making £30,000 a month. I thought I was fucking Billy Big Shit, because most people in the UK make maybe £3,000 a month. So I'm making 10 times more than everyone else. And I work for myself, and I'm in fitness. I'm like Billy Big Balls. I went to the US and to a business event. I met that guy now who's one of my best friends. He was making 2 to 3 million a month.
Yes.
And I was like, oh shit. And then I learned so much from him so quickly from just being around him and from our friendship that then elevated me dramatically. And this is where proximity is power. If you get around successful people, you start to see the things they do, the way they think. And that's ultimately kind of the game. The big thing that people shouldn't do is ask people, oh, can I get you for coffee? Or can I people don't want that. You're better off actually even creating a podcast and invite people on.
They're not gonna, people are busy.
Yeah, they don't want free things.
And then, obviously it sounds like we're talking about financial success, but it's the same thing with everything. If you're sitting with people who just eat rubbish all day, this is what my dad taught me actually. One time I was spending a lot of time when I was way younger with people that smoke. And I said, look, Dad, I'm not going to smoke. And he said, look, it's just a matter of time. The first time they offer you one, you go, no, I don't smoke. Second, third, 100th time, you might say, well, let me taste it. That's exactly what happened. Now, just for anyone watching this, I don't smoke. This was when I was 14. But, proximity is power. And, you're only going to rise to the average of the group that you're with. Because that's the truth, So now, what is the biggest mistake that you see online coaches, in your case, make when they're trying to either start out or scale? What's the biggest mistake that you're seeing?
Trying to solve the right problem in the wrong order. So sometimes, you kind of said earlier to me, but sometimes skipping steps. Even I can give a good example. So we teach people a lot in terms of how to grow paid ads. There's the easy strategy that works, and then there's the advanced one, which really big businesses run. A lot of people are oh, this guy makes this much, so I should go and do the advanced. No. There's so much it takes to try and pull that off. So I think that's partly one thing. The second thing is, do you want to be rich or do you want to be famous? Because a lot of people will look at people who've got great engagement on social media. They get loads of likes, they get loads of comments. Bro, I know these fucking guys. They make no money. They're broke as fuck. People will look up to them and you're looking up to the wrong people. There's we've got a client work with who makes 800,000 a month who no one would know who he is. And there's people who are ghosts who kind of go under the radar on social media who absolutely slay. But there's people who are influencers who look like they crush, who are robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I think try and look for someone who's done the exact thing you want to do and then model it. And that's essentially what I've done throughout my entire career, having invested $500,000 plus in terms of education, is like, what problem do I need to solve right now? Who's the best person in the world who can solve this for me? So I can then collapse that time down, get that skill, and then go to the next thing. Because skill is like a force multiplier. And this is what most people don't understand. And I'll explain why. Let's say, for example, I learn the skill of how to run paid advertising. So I got paid someone to basically teach me to that. I was going to Scotland loads, which is not a very nice place in Glasgow. So I went through that and I put myself out to go and do that. On the other side of that, I then also learned how to sell. So if I learn how to get leads and then how to sell really well, I've then got a force multiplier of these two things together. Whereas if I just know how to sell but I can't get leads, I'm stuck. If I know how to get leads and can't sell, I'm stuck. And I think that's where most people aren't willing to put themselves out to go and do these things. Like, I'm flying to Las Vegas in a week for one day to spend with Alex Hormozi and his team to go through my business. 44-hour round trip for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And like, most people are like, oh, like, we have events in Dubai and sometimes our clients don't even come. I'm like, dude, like, you literally have to come like 20 minutes. Like, I'll go 44 hours and spend a fortune to do it because I know someone can say one thing to me that could transform my life.
So it sounds like your gift is just the same thing you learned from real estate, where you was selling real estate, which is just modeling. You know, like, someone else is successful. Let me learn the stuff. Let me crunch years into days. And you're now doing that in your business, and it's clearly made you very successful. The other thing that sounds like you focus on is value, not viral. You know, people want to go viral, but viral doesn't even always mean value. Like, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say, I'm going to say OnlyFans. Cut that bit. We're not going to talk about OnlyFans. So you can go viral, but, you know, you could probably just put an orange wig on and go out in the street and you'll go viral, but no one's going to pay you. So you're focusing on value, and you're teaching people to go and focus on being valuable rather than trying to just go viral.
There's an importance of virality if you can do it in the right way, but there's a wrong way.
The ratio.
And a lot of people do it also the wrong way. So I think understanding that difference is important, but also having the mechanisms on the back end to actually monetize off of traffic is very important, because I see a lot of people who have a lot of traffic, but they don't make any money. And I'll give you another example. I spoke to a guy 2 weeks ago, got 1.5 million on Instagram, 2.6 million on YouTube, and he only makes 40,000 a month. Like I said, only, but like, I'm like, dude, like, you could make 400K a month in 6 months if you do this properly.
With all the leads, yeah.
Without any paid ads. Like,
a lot of them are scared of making offers, though. That's a whole different topic. It'll probably take us another 10 minutes. They don't have the psychology. They're like, they want to be liked a lot. So they're like scared of making offers to people.
But the reason they're scared of making offers is they don't believe in their product. Because if I have 1,000% certainty in what I do, I will put as many offers out there, because I know more offers out there, more people we can help, more people's lives I can change, and more messages I can get from people like Chris of like, thank you so much for everything you and the team do, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's ultimately their own insecurity, because their thing probably isn't as good as it should be, which ultimately, again, is a business problem.
Got it. Let's shift to the good trip of Alex Hormozi. So obviously you've been working with Alex Hormozi for 6 months now.
Yeah, so we've been doing some stuff with their team.
What are the biggest lessons you've learned from Alex Hormozi while working with Acquisition?
When I went to, I think the first time I went to the event, the big thing was looking at the right problem we need to solve. So there was a clip that was on his podcast where I talked about, we have basically this issue. We want to scale up paid ads. Do we do this type of ad strategy or this type of ad strategy, or do we focus on building a personal brand, or do we do both? And the answer in short was neither. It was essentially, you need to focus on getting your client churn down, and then also do some of these things as well. So I think a lot of it was just kind of reframing decision making and being more strategic with what we're doing. So I'm going out and again in a week for them to kind of look through everything we're doing and what the next phase of that is. And also I think the second big thing from them is I said I think we saturated the market in terms of like who we sell to, and they were like, we were selling to like boutique gyms making 2 to 3 million a month. Like, you haven't saturated the market. The market's way bigger than you realize. And I think that's probably one of the things I've learned the last 6 months is same thing for like anyone who's a fitness trainer, or you see on social media as fitness trainers. We now work with some golf trainers. So now I start seeing loads of golf coaches on my Instagram. So like whatever you're kind of exposed to, you just think, oh, like
your reticular activating system will always show you what you're focusing on.
I know everyone who's in it. Like, you don't do it. Like, so I think a lot of these are sometimes limiting beliefs we need to have broken, which is the big thing of having external feedback, because sometimes we're too close to our own businesses, which is why you need to have someone from the outside who you respect to be like, this, this, and this, and I just need kind of point in the right direction.
Alex has done extraordinarily well with content, and so have you. What do coaches and business owners need to do differently with their content to stand out today? Going back to what we talked about, value versus virality. What advice would you give to someone? What do they need to do differently with their content to stand out?
Any platform specifically, or all of them across the board?
You can choose.
Okay, so if you look across the board, I'd say, what problem do you solve and who is specifically you trying to work with and speak to? Those are the most important things. I think a lot of people are too vague with what they do. The biggest thing that people can actually do that's a massive hack, I'll give everyone straight away. We help people scale their businesses very heavily with AI. So here's the easiest way to be able to literally, I swear, but mind fuck people who are on your audience you want to sell to, is take all of your sales call transcripts, upload them into AI, get it to rip the top 10 pain points of your clients. Also get one of them to do a Big 5 Ocean personality test of like your best client, and then ask AI to write you like top 10 most manipulating hooks, content ideas, and then start to actually make content that either pulls out their problems or solves their problems. The biggest problem that most people have content-wise is either one, not posting enough content, or two, is the packaging around it isn't good. So if their YouTube videos, for example, can be amazing, but if the title's terrible and then the thumbnail's not great, no one's going to click on it. And our goal with content is always curiosity gap. So to get someone to actually do the click and take the next step or watch through the video. And I think that is the big thing people need to frame, and also look at like what's working and what's not, and try and be analytical with that.
So it goes back to analytics and data. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's beautiful. Cool. My last question to you is, you surprise me because you manage hundreds of trainers. You've scaled to millions. You're in a relationship. You're about to become a father. You're still physically fit. How do you do all of that without burning out?
A juggling act of a bit like Icarus who flies too close to the sun. I kind of getting a bit jaded and transparent. It had probably been the last week, which is I've taken a few days off training. So sometimes when you're younger, you tend to like let your balls make your decision in terms of like, fuck it, I'm just going to train anyway, or just work out. When you're older, you actually use your brain. So like sometimes it's about working smart, not working hard. So like I do a lot of things to try and maximize recovery on the other aspect, whether it be optimizing my sleep. I take a lot of peptides. I do a lot of weird biohacking stuff to really try and maximize everything. Dude, like you got Whoop Band on as well. Yeah. Like being, again, dated kind of job.
Analytics and data again.
And it's the same thing that kind of runs life. And I think the more you understand that your success in life is determined upon your ability to think, the more you will prioritize looking after your body from a physical health standpoint and recovery, which is why when you ask me what's the big thing someone needs to change, that first and foremost. Because if you're fitter and in better shape and in better health, it will improve your ability to think, which then allows you to make better decisions to have a better life.
Sounds like, that cliche saying, awareness is the first step to cure. It's not the cure, but a lot of people aren't even aware. So it's like, take a step back, become aware. Thinking if I've got any other questions before we wrap it up. I think we're good. So lightning round.
Okay.
What is the biggest lessons you've learned from skiing that apply to business?
Don't go too fast, it'll hurt.
Got it. And the reason I'm asking that, if anyone's thinking, what the hell skiing got to do with this? You're a qualified skiing instructor.
Yeah.
One belief that you wish you had much, much sooner.
Every market is much bigger than you realize.
What does a limitless life mean to you?
To be able to do what you want, when you want, with who you want.
Awesome. Great. So where can listeners find you? And if you want to plug your 4Cs course, feel free.
If you check me out on Instagram at Charlie Johnson Fitness, we've also got a podcast that's called The Charlie Johnson Show. It's on all platforms. We have a YouTube video if anyone wants to build, or a YouTube channel if anyone wants to build a business, which will map you through everything, called Charlie Johnson Scaling Systems. And then we also have a course which teaches people how to turn content and ads into basically clients. I'm sure we'll drop the link for that below. Literally maps through how everything we do that, and also with AI.
Beautiful. I'll put all the links in the description. Thank you very much.
Big thank you, dude. It's great.
That's a wrap with Charlie Johnson. Huge lessons and no fluff. Go ahead and click all his links below to keep up with his journey. And if this episode hit home for you, do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button and leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. We read every single one, and it helps us bring on more guests just like Charlie to help you build a limitless life.